Hi, I'm Dan Turner with Best Graphics. We are going to show you in this video the setup of the Osako Estar trimmer, stitcher, and pockets. Okay, so this is our setup procedure for a 323 Osako trimmer. Obviously, we open the doors. You're going to need these three tools: your yoke tool, a 30mm wrench, and then a set of metric Allens. First thing we do, take the trimmer and put it all the way at its bottom position. You can tell the trimmer is at its bottom position when the cam follower is at the top of this cam, or you can see the gap here on your clamps. First thing we loosen our locking bolts. Undo our handle, and then we can take the trimmer to whatever size we want to set the book at. Right now it's at 11 inches. So we move it, we'll move it back towards the 11 inch. Lock this handle. Lock up our nuts. The second thing we set is our backstops for our face timing. So this would be your 8.5 inch setting if you're running an 8.5 by 11 book. This would be your 11 inch setting if you're running an 8.5 by 11 book. Loosen up the handle. Pointer is pointing between 8 and 9. 1 through 7 here. 1 is an 8. 2 is 2 is a quarter. 3 is 3/8. 4 would be a half. So we take it, get our pointer roughly at that position and lock that. The third thing we set is our yoke timing. This is the timing for the book coming into the trimmer. Take our yoke tool, loosen this up. Your pointer in the center here will be pointing at a number that will be equal to what your face trim timing is. So 8.5 here would equal 8.5 here. Sometimes you have to give this thing a little bit of a knock to get it loose, but then you take and you turn and get this number to equal that. Make sure we lock this back down tight. If you don't, this will spin out of time, and then the machine will be out of time. So when we are setting our yoke timing, we want to remember that this number here will always be equal to what this number is here. So if this is 8.5, this is 8.5. So we have finished our first step in setting up the 323 trimmer. Our second step we have to do is we take the trimmer to its top position so we can set our belts. You can tell the trimmer is at its top position when the cam follower is at the bottom of the cam. Clamps are fully up, knives are fully up. Ready?
I am.
Okay. So we take our book. For instance, this is just 2 16-pagers. Take our book. I usually tear the book into a manageable section. Loosen up our handle for the belts. I'm going to raise the belts up so I can get my book into my belt rollers here. I'm now going to take this pressure back down till I get just a little bit of drag on the book. The way I always set it is, the way I tell people is, if you know a folder, you should have enough drag on here that it would actually not fold properly in your fold rollers. After that, we can just check our back rollers here. They're adjusted here, again, for same pressure. And then we come around to the front. We check our rollers here for belt pressure. These are adjusted with your 2 knobs here. So we have finished our first and second procedures in setting up the 323 Osako trimmer. This is the third thing we have to do. So we take our full book, we set it in the infeed of the trimmer. Normally your book is going to have some sort of a mark here for your trim. That mark, if you line that mark up with the left edge of this belt, that will give you they'll give you a pretty accurate guide as to where your trim needs to be on this side. Generally, the edge of this belt will always line up with the bottom knife. So by turning this in and out, that will move this belt assembly in and out to help guide your book. Then we move this one, the right-hand side one, which will move your right-hand side belt to position the book centered coming into the trimmer. After we have finished setting our belts here, we have to take our full book, bring it back against your shark fins, your infeed. We're going to jog this book into our first cut. Now this is where the yoke timing comes into place. We want our book to hit our stops when the stops are all the way up at the top position. You see how the stops were all the way up and the book came and rested against there. If the book is not making it to these stops, then our yoke timing is too short and the number would need to be bigger. Again, 8.5 would have to be a 9. For demonstration purposes, I had the brushes out of the machine when we jogged our book into our first cut. Again, book comes into the first cut, makes it up to the stops. At this point, we would set our brushes. All we do is loosen up the 2 Allen screws. Normally it's going to be a number 5mm Allen. Loosen them up, and I let the brush rest against the book, and then tighten it down. And then I do the same thing for this side. We just finished setting our brushes. The next step we have to set is our joggers. The jogger is normally going to be about 1 inch from the backbone of your book. Loosen up this bolt. Normally it's a number 6 wrench. Your cam follower should be at the high point of the cam when you set this. Loosen up the number 6. Bring your jogger out. Bring it back in so it just touches the book. And then lock it back down. If you need to move the jogger for a larger or smaller book, loosen up your set screw here, and this will slide back and forth. This is setting the left-hand side of the book. There's the same setting on the opposite side. Now we're going to jog the book to our second cut and set our brushes there. Book makes its cut, travels through, and comes against our stops for the second cut. At this position is when we'd set our brushes for the second cut. This is more of a feel. I reach underneath and I get, again, the brush to just drag on the book. We have just finished setting up the trimmer. The last thing I always do is I take my full book again. I'm going to set it on the infeed. I'm going to close the trimmer doors. Run the book through its speed, and then check my sizes. So I check my sizes, and then if I would make my adjustments based off of that, if something is too big or too small. Okay, so we have just finished setting up our 323 Osako trimmer. The next thing we're going to set up is our stitcher. This is the Estar model. This is our more basic mechanical models. We have other models that are more automated we are going to show in other videos. Anyways, what we need are these two tools. We need our metric Allens again and a 14 millimeter wrench to set our line chain. Again, I take my full book and I'm going to set it on the chain. We press signature scanner. We want to make sure a signature scanner says it's on. You can turn it off, then it would be non-functional. We want it on. We press set and set a second time. The book will jog itself underneath this eye and measure the overall length of the untrimmed book. When it's done, our standard length and our actual length will be equal to each other. Our tolerance we can change for however the untrimmed book to be bad, let's say. So at 3 millimeters, if the book comes through at 303.6 or less, that's automatically going to be a good book, and it's going to allow the stitcher to work. Anything bigger than that number would not allow it to work. There's a front eye and a back eye that we adjust. Move this up and down. And if the eye is getting covered up by the book, a green light will be on. That'll be automatically a bad book. So we want these eyes to be somewhere below the book, allowing the book to be good every time. What these eyes are for is if that book were to be falling off the chain, say for instance like this, then it would be reading that as a bad book, automatically rejecting it no matter what, not giving you a stitcher jam. This is the eye for the front one. This is the eye for the back one, just the exact same. After this is set, we set our caliper. We'll go into the monitor screen. Now we're going to set our caliper. This one's called measurement. Sometimes they're called caliper, sometimes they're called measurement. We're going to take our book, jog our book underneath the caliper wheel at 6 o'clock, if not a little bit past. Right now I've got it just a touch past. This is where the caliper is reading, somewhere at the 6 o'clock position. Again, if we go a little bit past, it gets a little bit more accurate read. At this position, we loosen up our handle. So we loosen our bottom nut, and we turn the top one. You can see we're taking the caliper, the middle piece of the caliper has to be in between the top and bottom limits. We want to get it as close to the top limit as we can get it. This top limit is the one for missing signatures, so missing your 4-pager. The bottom limit is the one for over signatures, so say generally a double on a cover or something along those lines. In between means it's going to be a good book, allows the stitch heads to fire. Now we jog that book past the stitch heads. Underneath our wire monitor, we set our height of our wire monitor. This is going to be detecting how many stitches we have. Normally, I want a gap of about, say, 1/4 to 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch between the wire monitor and the book. That's going to allow the wire monitor to operate probably best. When the book is underneath the wire monitor, our little amplifier red light will come on. That's working off this front eye, top and bottom. So our book is underneath our wire monitor. Red light is on, amplifier is reading the book. On our monitor screen, we can turn the wire monitor off and not use it at all, or this is on right now. With it on, if we jog that book now, past the wire monitor, you can see our count, red 1, 2. Red 2 stitches. 2 stitches there, 2 stitches there. That said it was okay. Allows the book now to travel through the delivery, up into our trimmer. And if the book is not centered coming into the trimmer, that's when we will set our line chain with our number 14 Allen. We go to the other side of the machine. Open up our guard. Loosen up our bolt. And we turn the dial to center the book coming into the trimmer, and then lock this back down. Close our guard. Okay, so now we take a new book. We're going to set that back on the line. Again, we're going to jog it past the signature scanner, make sure it says it's okay. Jog it past the caliper, make sure it says it's okay. It says measurement. Now this time, we're going to set our stitches. We're going to set our stitch heads. We don't want to set the stitch heads until after we set our line chain. And I'll stop at some place where the stitch heads have fired and are starting to put a stitch into the book. I'll take my trim book. We're going to fold this in half. And in half again. That'll help me to center my stitches. I lay that book against my untrimmed book, again figuring we'd have some sort of a trim happening there. Now I'm going to mark here and there and move my stitch heads to match that. Take our number 5 wrench. We're going to loosen up the bolt that locks the stitch head onto the stitcher. We're going to move this. So this piece here pretty much lines up with my mark. And then we're going to lock this bolt back down and do the same thing with the other stitch head. And then lock this bolt down. Take our book out and do the same thing with our clinchers. We're going to line our clinchers and center them with our stitch heads. We're loosen up these bottom bolts and their guides. If I center up my hole with the outside 2 edges of the driver, that'll pretty much line that up to where I need to be. The last thing we set, we loosen up these 2 handles and set our pressure for the stitch against for the stitch of the book. All right, so I'm going to bring a new book into the stitches. Again, stitch heads all the way down. Now it's completely down. You can see we don't have any tension yet on the bottom clinch. That is accomplished. We'll open up our bottom door. I'm going to loosen up this handle and this handle, and I bring it up so it presses against the top stitches. See, our gap is gone. Then we lock our handles back down. With that set, we take our book, again a new book, lay it on the line, and now we can run this book completely through and set our pressures in the delivery. again, we get our book, so it's just making its turn coming out of the line chain here, making its turn coming up, heading over towards the trimmer. So now we're going to set our pressures of our tucker belts. We do that, loosen up, it's a 17 wrench bolt. Loosen up this one, and we're going to loosen up the one on the other side. I take these and back them off so they turn freely. And then I'm going to bring them down so you just get a tension, just get a pressure. It's a feel type thing. That one comes down so it just touches, and lock down that nut. Same thing on this side here. This one comes down so it just touches. And then this one always gets an extra turn. That'll help to get that book to run straight from the stitcher into the trimmer. I then jog my book to my second position. We loosen this handle, and this is going to allows us to turn this knob, which gives us our pressure on these belts here to help drive that book out into the trimmer infeed. This dial, loosen up this handle, will change the position of these rollers here. That moves these rollers in and out. These rollers help to aid the transfer of the book from your tucker belts and your stitcher to come in centered into the trimmer. So now we have finished our setup of our stitcher and our trimmer for the Osako Estar. The next thing we're going to set up is our cover feeder. For the cover feeder, we generally need a set of Allens, and it's helpful to have this tool, which is used to turn the cover feeder over by hand. This tool fits into this hole. Again, allows us to turn the cover feeder. For some reason you don't have this tool, it's an 8mm wrench. I usually take a cover, and again, it would have some print on it to find a center position. For this one, we'll just fold it in half. And I lay that cover on the top table, centering my folded position with my score. If you need to move the guides, loosen on the outside, move this guide around, move this guide around. Same thing with these guys here, same thing with your back one. So bring these guides in so they're just touching on both sides. And then I can take my stack of covers and drop them in the table. We'll turn our pumps on. I'm going to roll one cover around by hand. And we're going to set our score. Our score is set with this dial here. Less tension, more tension. I'm going to roll it around, down, then I'm going to stop it just before it gets into the folding area. When I get my depth of my score set right, you should be able to see your line in there. And fold this in half, and I'm pretty centered to where I would want to be. Now, of course, if it's not centered to where I want this score to be, we're going to move our guides here right and left to get it to where it needs to be. So I'm going to run another cover down to set the fold area here with my side guide pull system. Again, vacuum on and run one around. I'll turn the vacuum off. So we roll our cover down and have it come up against the first set of stops. We're then going to roll it again, and you see how the cover pulls sideways and gets the score, which we can't really see, centered over the fold area. Once it gets to there, we're going to loosen up this dial. We're going to set this guide so it just touches on the cover. So the cover is being pulled in the pull guide system over here, registering here. Cover is registered here and here. The last thing we set is our back stops to keep the cover from bouncing backwards at higher speeds. Number 3, Allen wrench. Just loosen that up, bring it down so it just touches. We do the same thing over on this side. So I've marked the score with a pen so you can actually see it move. So when I say you're moving this sideways to get it to center over the fold, and then drops out. Again, vacuum on and run one around. We'll turn the vacuum off. Down into our fold, pull sideways, releases it, comes out into our green belts. Moves up the top one, which kind of locks it. Bottom one moves it up and down. Get to a position where we're getting a good tension on it. This is what's going to help give us our final fold. It allows the cover to drop out on the line. Again, so we have finished setting up the 323 trimmer and the stitcher for the Osako Estar. The last thing for us to set up now is our pockets. These are 826 pockets, no automation in them. So this is going to be all mechanical. And generally, all we really need, again, is our metric Allens. We would start up top. I take my individual SIGs and I fold one in half to find some sort of a center point. Set my guides, set my backstop, and then this all can go back in and kind of get my final resting place. Usually you're going to have just a touch of play, helps the pocket to run proper. I'm going to turn vacuum on, grab my remote jogger, I'm going to run one around, and we get our signature up against our stops. You've got a guide here, a scale on this side. That scale we can use to set, if you measure from backbone to center of the lip, this would be in metric. So if we measure from here to here, we would have roughly 225 millimeters, or 22.5 centimeters. We then loosen up this handle, move our backstops to whatever number we think it is. You've got pressure on these 3 springs, which sets your pressure for your pickup of those rollers. We then want to check underneath to see where our lap grippers are actually grabbing. So we have our signature gets pulled up to the stops, we jog it around, and we make sure that our lap grippers are grabbing somewhere in the center of the lap. The next thing we set is our vacuum for the for opening the signature front and back. So right here, this is our front one. If I loosen up the handle and pull this out, that gives me less. Push it in, gives me vacuum. So right here, I've got vacuum. I'm going to pull it out to get it to release. And then I lock that in place. I do the same thing with the back one. And set that. These two guys here are for our air to help close the signature up. And then have the sig drop out to the line. And then run some at speed. These two levers here are what turn the vacuum on for the opener drum and the transfer drum. This lever here turns the vacuum on for the top sucker bar. All of the Osako pockets have a tilt back feature like the cover feeder is right now. All you have to do, there's nothing that locks it in place, just push each individual pocket out of the way and it tilts completely back, thus allowing you a good place for a hand feed station. So we just finished showing everybody the Estar setup. The Estar, like I said, has got the 826 pockets, a 323 trimmer, a regular Estar stitcher. That Estar we showed was a completely manual setup. We also have currently a tenor on the line on the floor. This tenor has a little bit of a different pocket on it. This pocket is an 836 pocket. Difference between this pocket and what the 826 is this pocket is double diameter drums. So it has two main drum grippers coming around. Runs at a slower speed. It's for a better, more consistent pickup of the product coming off the top table. Otherwise, same scenario of switches and levers here. You got your vacuums to turn your opener drum and gripper drum vacuum on and off. Turns your sucker bar on and off. This one does have something different where it has a timed air blast. Our timed air blast is this piece right here, which is what these guys are. Every time the pocket signature comes around, it gives you a blast of air. The only other difference being on the 836 pocket is you have this bar, which will take and help to hold the signature back against the main drum for when the lap grippers come to grab it. Another one of the different features on the tenor, as opposed to the Estar that we showed earlier, is when we set up our line chain on the Estar, it's all manual setup. On the tenor, it's an electronic setup. So if we press on size change, we go to memory, and we pick a size that's either already in there or size we can enter in. Let's say we want to make this size 250 millimeters. Hit set, start again, and what it'll do is it'll start to take the line chain, and it's going to take the line chain and move it to the 250 millimeter mark to center itself over the trimmer. Then takes the stitcher sled and it centers the sled over the line chain. And that is done.